People on Reddit, what is the creepiest, most unexplained thing you have seen in broad light? My dad, brother, and I went to a movie theater one day in Florida. Was around 4-ish, so it was getting darker but still light out. We went up to the front where you buy tickets, and when we looked around there was absolutely no one in the movie theater at all, no employees, no other guests. We simply walked in, looking all around to try to find anyone we could to purchase a movie ticket, but could find no one else. All the movies in each of the theaters we checked were running but with no one else inside. So we just sat down and watched a movie, then left without seeing anyone else the whole time. It was very surreal. It was 1984. I was 15 years old and was alone at my older sister's house. It was late morning. I had just got out of the shower, still wrapped in a towel, when I heard a noise outside. I looked out a window and watched a complete stranger tying the doorknob of the main entrance to the railing of the deck with a rope I used to walk the dog with. He then leaned a mop that was on the deck against the door. I called my sister, told her what happened, got dressed, got the heck out of the house through a different door and hid in the bushes until police arrived. The house was somewhat remote with no close neighbors. Found out later the door he tied up was unlocked. No clue how long he had been lurking around before I knew of his presence. To this day we have no idea who that was and what his motives were. Beyond creepy, definitely unexplained. When I was young, me and my cousins found a bloody shirt in our woods. My cousins and their parents hunted, so we thought maybe it was from that. But then we found a Ziploc bag with shoes and shorts. All had to be from an extremely petite woman or an older kid. When we told our uncle about it, we got punished and weren't allowed to talk about it. I don't speak to them anymore, but really makes you wonder. I believe there is a name for this phenomena, but I would never know how to go about Googling such a thing. But this was around 2013 or so, and I was having a smoke in front of my apartment on the front steps in the middle of the day, around noon or so. I got up to head back, and just for a few fleeting seconds while looking at the building, it looked totally unfamiliar. I knew I lived there. I knew it was my home. I knew I had just stepped outside only 5 minutes previously. But my brain was giving me some kind of indication that I had never seen this place before and that there was danger inherent. I just kind of violently wagged my head back and forth, like an aggressive no gesture, and was immediately back to normal. But I'll never forget that moment. It was like my concept of reality had very momentarily just cracked. My family had the car packed up for a road trip because we were moving across the country from the PNW to the Rust Belt. We were heading to the highway to get out of town and had to take some weird access road to get there. On the way, there was some man holding a long barrel rifle to a woman's head, walking through a vegetable garden. He was holding it with one hand and had a cigarette in his mouth. The woman was crying. My mom didn't believe me. I was 14. I know what I saw. Crossing at a busy intersection and seeing my perfect double walk towards me. We basically eyes locked until we passed each other. A total mindfuck. Even more disturbing. Instead of stopping and chatting and being amused by the entire biological coincidence, my immediate subconscious reaction was a massive rising internal rage that someone, somehow had stolen my face. Very, very weird. This is my dad's story, not mine. In the 80s, my dad was in the Peace Corps and lived in Sierra Leone for 3 years. He had a motorcycle and would ride around the roads when he had free time. One day he's riding a dirt road that snakes around a small mountainside or hillside past some construction works. About half a mile after the roadwork, he sees a man on the side of this dirt road on the mountain just laughing his butt off. And he was blue. Not like painted blue, but blue. At first my dad rode on, thinking nothing of it. And then it sunk in that he saw a blue dude sitting on the side of a dirt road laughing wildly. He turned around and rode back to where he saw the blue dude, and there was nothing there. He kept retracing his path beyond the roadwork and never saw the blue guy again. Later that day he went back to the village he was living in at the time and told the locals about what he had seen. The locals all laughed and said, essentially, no you didn't. White men can't see devils. Edit. Beyond the color of his skin. What made this even more spooky to my dad was the way the guy just completely disappeared when he backtracked. There was nowhere for him to go off the road, due to it being on a hillside, and he never found him again on the road, making it seem as if the blue man simply vanished off the face of the earth. Edit 2. Talked to my dad more about this one this afternoon. He said the color of his skin was like bright blue, like unnaturally blue, bright blue. He also said he could hear the voice of the guy in his head like he was talking directly into my dad's mind, telepathy style. An older man watching me at a gas station and then literally following me for miles around town. Like if I turned into a parking lot and started driving another road, he still followed me. I got on a 4-lane road in the left lane and got beside someone, then sped up and merged while taking an exit, so the guy was blocked by the pickup truck in the right lane. That's probably the scariest thing I've ever had happen in broad daylight. My high school girlfriend and her family all talked about the ghost in their house and always said that it sounded like a man wearing boots walking down the hallway. We were all very close, and one day when they weren't home I just walked in and went to my GFS room and laid on her bed while I waited for them to get back. A man in boots walked slowly right down the hall and right past the door to GFS room where I was laying. I did the next logical thing and just climbed out of her bedroom window. They showed up a few minutes later and asked why I was just standing around in the front yard and why I hadn't just gone in. I told them that I heard the ghost and climbed out of the window to escape. They laughed their freaking heads off. Broad daylight, totally creepy and very unexplained. I was walking past a church one day when I was about 15 and standing in front of one of the graves was a cowboy dressed head to toe in pure white. He looked straight out of a movie. His hat, shirt, waistcoat, trousers and boots were also white, like an incredibly clean white as if he'd only just put them on. He was white, had short brown hair, stubble and was an average-looking guy. I kept staring at him, blinked and then he was just fucking gone. I live in the UK so it was weird to see anyone resembling a cowboy anyway. I don't know if it was my mind playing tricks on me but I could swear he was there. He looked so real. I saw a zombie, naked man, ashy dirty skin, eyes rolled up in his head, stiff limbs sort of lurching through traffic in Jamaica. I was working in Kingston, Jamaica at the time in the late 80s. I asked my Jamaican crew and they said yes it was a zombie. But it is a drug, not magic. They said people do this to people for revenge. A few weeks later I saw another one, an old woman this time. I was walking with a friend of mine in the city in broad daylight. A man was walking in 10 degrees Celsius fully naked with his wang fluttering into the wind. This shocked both of us so much our brains restarted and it took us 20 seconds to actually process what we saw. I was maybe 14 to 15 years old and I would frequently sleep on the couch in our living room. We lived in a typical suburban colonial where the couch faced the front door. Since I could remember, we never locked our doors as we lived in a pretty decent city. I remember one night I was still awake at 3-4 a.m. listening to music when I saw a car quickly pull up our driveway. I then saw a very skinny, tall man open our front door, stand in the hallway for 20 to 30 seconds facing my direction, then leave the house and drive away quickly. I remember telling my parents and entire family this in the morning, and they did not believe me. My dad insisted it was him, as he'd leave for work in the early hours of the morning. I know I was young, but I also know that was not my dad, as my dad was stockier and shorter than this man. Freaks me out to this day to think what this man was going to do. In college, I lived on the 11th floor in an apartment with no balcony and it was about 4:30 in the afternoon. I watched a man walk into my apartment about 10 seconds before I walked in, and habitually bolted the door behind me. I was living with 3 roommates at the time so I just figured they were having guests over, no biggie. I put my stuff on the couch and went towards the back bedroom to say hi to whoever came over. My roommates had no idea what I was talking about. It wasn't a big apartment but I searched everywhere. My roommate stayed in the back bedroom sufficiently freaked out. There was no one else in the apartment and the door was still bolted from the inside. When I was 4 and my brother was 10, he stayed home from school and my mom left him to babysit me. She left numbers on the fridge and stuff and off to work. I don't know how much longer after she left it happened, but we heard our dog barking viciously, which was completely out of character for her. At this point, my brother and I are in the kitchen waiting for our biscuits in the oven and the sound of Fluffy barking gets incredibly louder, which meant she was in the front lawn around the side of the kitchen entrance. The gate that led to the back was a little further down the side of the house and whoever was outside was in the gap in between out of Fluffy's reach. My brother opens the kitchen curtains to see if he could get a view as to what's going on. Right as he opened the curtains, there was a man looking right down at us, almost like he expected my brother to open the curtains. The doorknob began to rattle and my brother ran to the living room and grabbed the phone, taking me with him. As soon as he got on the phone, the rattle stopped. My mom came home and at the same time the police showed up for a statement. They never found the guy. My brother remembers it as vividly as I do and it's the creepiest thing I've ever lived through. When I was 6 years old back in the 80s, there was a large field behind my grandmother's home in Compton, California. We were not allowed to go back there. Being the obedient children we were, my cousin and I hopped the fence and went and checked it out. We noticed a weird smell and saw a box in the middle of the field with flies flying all around it. We were too young to know what that meant. So we creep up to the box and we open it and it's a Rottweiler's head. I've never forgotten that. I asked my aunt about it the other day and she said during that time there was talk of devil worshippers in the area. I was a kid about 15, seen some old man looked about 70. He opened up a sewer grate and just hopped in. I was standing on a street corner waiting to cross the street. There is a man there with a boy that doesn't seem to be his, but I think nothing of it. Then this other guy rolls up to the stoplight in a convertible also with a young boy in the front seat. The guy in the car yells to the guy at the crosswalk, Hey, is that your boy? Nice. The guy at the crosswalk kind of smiles nervously and waves as the car drove off, and me and my friend exchanged worried looks, pretty certain we just saw the pedos giving each other the what's up in the street. Not me, but my dad. He was outside at the far end of the yard and saw me standing on the stairs, whistling for him to come back to the house. When he got back inside, he asked what was up and why I changed my shirt. I hadn't been outside, didn't hear any whistling, and was wearing the same black shirt I'd been wearing all day, not the white shirt he saw me wearing when he saw me outside a few minutes earlier. I once saw a dog walk on two legs across a street. Scared the piss out of me.